Frank Lampard is back, baby! But seriously, he is the Chelsea interim head coach. And we want to know how his team will play. What will Chelsea play like under Lampard? Will it be the same as last time? What even was that? We can probably work out a few things from how Lampard's last Chelsea team played. Forget Everton, I think it's a different sort of team. Now we know that Lampard does prefer to play this sort of 4-2-3-1 or a 4-3-3. And it'll look like if it's a 4-3-3, you might have a player here, and you'll get one anchor player, one that moves up and be a box-to-box kind of midfielder, and then the 8 becomes a 10, or you just have a straight double pivot with a 10 behind. His principles are very clearly to attack, cause chaos, and then just try and overwhelm the opponent by really going at them, and it makes them really fun to watch. His Derby team before that were quite fun as well. Very chaotic, lots of goals scored, but lots of goals conceded. They want to get the ball forward very quickly from the back, so what they often had would be 2 centre-backs, obviously at the back here, Silva here, and then rather than playing the pass straight into Kante or Enzo from the very first phase of build-up, what they'll often do is that someone like Mount will start wide, tight to the touchline, the defence can't really go out because they want to keep this shape like this. Mount comes into this space and then they can fire a pass through, and that takes out one line of midfield and one line of defence from the opposition, and then this player can then turn and go. We did it a lot with Pedro. Pedro did this a lot for Chelsea in this sort of side, and the same thing on the left. So the players who's wide will drop into this space here, then you get this flat pass out, and then they can just turn and go from there. And once Chelsea get the ball past that line of defence, then they all go forwards. As we said, it's very chaotic. And Lampard, I think, wants to create this chaos because it's very hard to defend against. If you're in a defensive shape and it's slow, it's very hard to open that up. And so like Potter's Chelsea, quite slow and ponderous, didn't really create any chances, everything had to go out wide, so nothing really happened. But what you'll get with Lampard, I think, is that when they get in the final third, you'll get a striker, probably Aubameyang, could be Kai Havertz, who was there under Lampard as well, but didn't have the best of times, having come out of having COVID, basically, one of the big things. So Aubameyang was a player that Lampard wanted to bring to Chelsea from Arsenal in the first place. So interesting to see if he gets back in the team, if he does. But if you have a player who can run him beyond the last man, it makes a big difference. Could be Aubameyang, could be Sterling plays there. But you put Aubameyang in here to pin the defenders back, that's good. Then the number 10 comes slightly next to him. So his first line would be the striker, second line is number 10, joined by the left winger, say, will be over here, then joined by the overlapping fullback. Remember, keeping the pitch nice and wide to create passing options. And then Enzo might come up to support over here. And that obviously, as you start getting more players forward, the defending team has to push more players back to deal with it. The defending team start to come back now. Kante comes up, and under Frank Lampard, Kante was more of a box-to-box roaming attacking player. So normally Kante would operate in these sorts of bits of the pitch, most of the pitch, to be honest, where he wins the ball back an awful lot. But under Lampard, when he was there, he was often in these attacking areas, kind of using this right space. So he was both a pivot player to help with build-up, but actually not really used, so not a pivot at all. And then he was a box-to-box player who was more of an attacker. And he scored a lot of goals for Chelsea under Lampard. It was weird. Maybe not a lot, but you know what I mean. He did well. He'll be over here helping out with this. All these players on the left-hand side. Defenders push up because you won't play a high line. That's another thing Lampard's team did. And then you've got Reece James will push up to create the width. You get all this width here, which leaves Mount kind of spare. Now, because all these players on the left side, the defending team, they kind of have to pull over and stay compact. We know our team has to stay compact because you don't want to leave any space for passes. But when you've got all these players here, you've got loads of chances to combine, loads of lovely play you can get with these guys. 1-2s, getting in behind, say, Mudryk can play 1-2 with Aubameyang through in here, and you've got Felix, might be able to finish at the back post. These sort of combination plays. It just makes them hard to defend against, creating that chaos, but it also leaves a player spare. It makes them mount over here. And this is a common thing I think we saw with Lampard's Chelsea in the past, was that you had a front four that had a big gap between the right-sided and the number 10 or the number 9, whichever way around it was. And the same for the opposite side. If they build up on the right-hand side, it'll be the left who's spare. And so what that means is when you're building up and the team's focused on what you're doing on this side of the pitch, is that you can get it back to Enzo, who can then switch the ball over to someone like Mount, who is now either spare with an overlapping double up on this side. And that's obviously dangerous because you've got someone in space who can deliver the ball into the area. But it also means the team has to rapidly get across to deal with that straight away. And you've got the overload. And again, this creates more chaos because their team's trying to transition to another defensive shape, which opens up a bit of space for someone to get the ball in the box to score. And if they can get the ball into these areas with players like Felix, who can do amazing things in tight situations, Mason Mount as well, that'll be quite good. But the downsides to this, all these principles, and we saw it time and time and again with Lampard's Chelsea, they score lots of goals, lots of chances, they create lots of chances, but they concede loads, specifically on the counter-attack. Now, a lot of teams play a 2-3-5 or 3-2-5 defensive shape. Lampard's teams don't, in the past, haven't really done that, and I haven't seen enough at Everton because he's not really had the chance to do it to show that he's learned from that. Everton, their big problem was being weak defensively. They couldn't score, they wanted to attack, but they conceded loads of easy goals, especially in transition. And when they were 1-0 down, it was even worse because they would push more players forward and leave themselves open on the counter-attack. This Chelsea team has the same problem. You push all these players forward, sure enough, but a good team in the Premier League will lock you down. They won't leave any space to pass it around. And when someone drops in here and wins the ball, say Aubameyang and Felix and Enzo are linking together and the ball gets loose, what happens is that suddenly you have loads of opportunity to get forward from these attacking players. And because these guys are all behind the ball, they're all really far away, it's very hard to catch up with the attacking team. So naturally, they can get the ball forward and suddenly you have players charging forward. This happened time and time again under Lampard. It was a 3v2 or a 3v3 or a 4v3 and the opposition going at you like this. And it really caused them problems. That's where lots of the goals they conceded were from. So just to reiterate, they'll be very fun to watch, very attacking, lots of chaos created, but that in turn creates problems. You can see they stretch the pitch, look at my lovely drawings here. They stretch the pitch to make it nice and wide. That opens passing lanes so they can get the ball forward in this shape, but that in turn leaves a big open gap where they can be countered through, and that's what teams kept doing against them back in the day. That's what used to keep happening. But who will actually start for them? And who will play? And how does Lampard manage this massive squad? There's an article in The Athletic, it's a great report about what went wrong from last time, and a lot of the problems were his man management apparently, and how he couldn't get players who weren't in the team to feel like they were part of the squad. I didn't maybe give players tactical instructions that they needed. Lots of discontent. What will he do this time? Well, I think, as I said, it's the 4-2-3-1 because it makes sense to the players he's got and how he wants to play. And the reason I think he'll have these players is because he wants to have a striker. Now Aubameyang, sure enough, out in the cold. But Aubameyang was a player that Lampard wanted and is a number 9, which is a very different profile of player to what they have. You can play Sterling as a player who runs in behind, but he's not good at finishing. He's not going to give you the link-up play that you need in this sort of part of the pitch. You can play Pulisic maybe as well, not a striker. And then you're kind of lost with other players who might come in, like Fofana maybe, I don't know. It's not really great options, which is why Aubameyang is in there for me as a possible option. But because he might be frozen out of the team, let's pretend he's not there, because that is a likely thing to happen. And then you put in Kai Havertz. And then rather than having that number 9 who's floating about, you get the same problem they've had in the past where you have 2 false 9s like Felix and Havertz getting in behind, no penetration in the last line, and then when you have no penetration, the defensive team can push a bit higher up. What then happens is that you have lots of players clustered together, and it makes it probably a bit easier for the team who's defending to win the ball and push them back again. So it's one of the reasons why I'm not sure Havertz would start there like that. And if they did play Havertz as a false 9, I wonder whether they might change the shape to be more of that 4-3-3. So you could do that by getting Mudryk out the team, because he hasn't performed particularly well, push Felix out to the left, then you've got Havertz as maybe this central 9 figure who can drop in to help and build up as well. Then that means you could put Mount into this midfield, or play Kovacic in this sort of position here. These are all players that Lampard has liked in the past, and then you can bring in Ziyech. So if you could have Kovacic, one of the midfielders, as an option, Mount could play midfield, help off the ball, he's very good at that, but also help with turning the shape into the 4-2-3-1, with Felix here overlapping with Chilwell. And Ziyech, a player that Lampard has liked in the past, could come in, left footer on the right hand side, very good, that might work. No, PSG wanted him, he's a really good player. Conor Gallagher might get some game time. There's just too many players. There's too many variations to go through it. But the reason I think particularly these players will be here is because it looks similar to what he's done in the past, and it just makes sense to have them on the pitch. You want to have defensive solidity, which is what that sort of midfield would give you. You want to apply what Lampard's attacking principles are, which is getting the ball forward quickly, having attacking fullbacks, having players coming inside the pitch to help out, and there's lots of clever players close together. If this is what they do, it kind of makes sense. What they have to do is stop the counter-attacks that they were conceding too many of from happening again, and then it's quite a good team. And like I said, it was fun last time. It was fun. They just didn't win all the games they're supposed to. But who does? What really matters? Fun or winning the games? Probably both. But Lampard can do one, or maybe both. I don't know. This is the end of the video. Goodbye.
If you like this video, please consider subscribing to the channel. The Athletic is home to some of the world's best sports journalists, including journalists dedicated to each Premier League team, so every fan gets the coverage they deserve, not just the big clubs. And you can try it for free now for 30 days. See the link in the description.